Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Karin Helmstedt.
Hello there, and a warm welcome to our highlights edition. And before we kick off, let's have a look at today's topics. Extreme athletes. A mountaineering couple conquers all the world's 8,000er peaks. Organic art. A photographer uses bacteria to create startling new images. And classic film, the Schuman at Pier 2 documentary, premieres in Berlin. Well, it was her fourth attempt, but when Gerlinde Kaltenbrunner reached the top of K2 just last year, she became the first woman to conquer all 14 of the world's 8,000-metre peaks without the help of supplementary oxygen. Well, it just so happens that the Austrian native is married to the only German to also accomplish the same feat, and we met up with this powerful pair that knows how to set lofty goals and reach them.
Gerlinde Kaltenbrunner and Ralf Dwimowitz braved the cold, the wind, the altitudes, and physical exhaustion to reach the world's highest summits. In 2011, they climbed the K2 in Asia, the world's second highest peak.
The moment you reach the summit is almost like an explosion. All the energy you've put into it comes back all at once, and everyone's feeling just the same. You're all happy and you can share the triumph.
At home in the Black Forest town of Bühl, the two professional mountaineers prepare for their expeditions with endurance training and long hours on their basement climbing wall. But it takes more than a well-trained body to climb the highest mountains.
You definitely need willpower, endurance, patience, and discipline. And by all means, team spirit, since we always go up in small groups.
50-year-old Ralf Dwimowitz and 41-year-old Gerlinde Kaltenbrunner met 10 years ago in the Himalayas. They share romantic memories of a night they spent together in Tibet.
It was 7,000 meters up during the monsoon, and it kept on flashing lightning. It lit up the southwestern face of Mount Everest bright as day, so we spontaneously decided to sleep outside the tent instead of in it, and at minus 17 degrees Celsius, it was still relatively warm. So we just lay down and enjoyed the atmosphere. That's when I asked Gerlinde if she'd like to marry me.
And I said yes.
Fortunately.
Now the couple has written their first joint book about their successes as well as their setbacks and fears. Both Kaltenbrunner and Dwimowitz have conquered all 14 of the world's 8,000-meter summits.
As Ralph always says, you have to live 120 years to do everything you'd like to.
Now the couple is planning a new expedition, which will probably take them to Alaska.
Well, Made in Germany is a stamp of origin that stands for quality all over the globe, and it's done so for over a century now. And yet, Pascal Johansen figured it wasn't quite saying enough anymore. He's the curator of a brand new exhibition at Berlin's Direktorenhaus Gallery, and he claims that the most progressive work coming out of this country is actually handmade in Germany. Here's more.
You might not think so at first, but these objects were handmade by specialists, highly proficient in traditional crafts that date back centuries. Handmade in Germany displays the work of 30 product designers and manufacturers. Each object has its own distinctive visual identity.
People are familiar with this typical minimalist, sparse, clean, straight-edge design. But this doesn't really occur in the exhibition. We want to show the sensual side of German design. And we're proud that it's a bit different from what people usually associate with German design, after all the design prizes.
Furstenberg porcelain has given a modern spin to a glazing technique invented 1,000 years ago. Some of the German brands here are world famous. Just a fountain pen, you might think, but this writing utensil, handmade from gold and titanium, would set you back almost 10,000 euros.
Montblanc was founded in 1906. The goldsmithing, grinding, cutting, and metal bending skills date from that time. They're old craft skills, and if we didn't bring them up to date by combining them with contemporary themes, materials, and designers, then skills like this would soon die out.
Fox Quintus and Tim Browns from the design studio E27 in Berlin regularly team up with small-scale manufacturers who are interested in turning out high-quality items. It's not uncommon these days for young designers to work hand-in-hand with traditional firms. The two men from E27 love coming up with simple but effective designs like this hanging light.
The reflector is based on a simple technical principle, but a charming one that solves a practical problem, adjusting the height of a light. You can pull the cord through this tube, and this twist of the cord makes sure the lamp always stays in the right position. What is also important to us is for the light to display these principles rather than conceal them, and that's true of all our products.
This handmade lamp with its simple technology can be pointed in just about any direction.
I think falling in love with something is an important factor with handmade design products. That's because a lot of love has been invested in them, as far as the idea, the attention to detail, and the skills are concerned. That's tangible, even if it doesn't jump out at you immediately.
Back at the exhibition in Berlin's Direktorenhaus, a gallery for modern art and design, more and more customers are interested in handmade products, especially when they combine design and art.
Well, it's certainly no secret that space is tight in big cities and that real estate, no matter how small, is money. So Polish architect Jakub Szcząsny decided to do an experiment, and he built the world's narrowest house in Warsaw, and it's just 122 centimeters wide. Well, his project has now pioneered a whole new way of looking at narrow lots. So we went to get the lowdown on some slim living.
Polish architect Jakub Szcząsny is on his way to his latest project. 3 years ago, he discovered this building gap. Too narrow for a driveway, but just enough room for a house, he thought. At 1.22 meters across, at its widest point, the finished product is quite possibly the world's thinnest home.
This was the biggest challenge in my life, because I've never done something as narrow.
At the entrance to the house in the back, the building is just 72 centimeters wide. But inside, it accommodates all the amenities of modern-day living. Israeli writer Edgar Karat is the official resident of the 14.5 square meter space. The house is located in the Wola district, once Warsaw's Jewish ghetto. As a child, Karat's mother was smuggled out and escaped death. The author has already spent a few nights in the house that carries his family's name.
Well, you know, before I came here, I was very much afraid that it would be claustrophobic, you know, that it will be dark. I feel like as a sardine in a tin. But I actually feel very comfortable in it. I think it's designed in such a way, you know, there is a lot of light in it.
Under Polish law, the house is too small to be a residence, so it's classified as an art installation.
Well, the first time I've heard about this idea was that when Kuba called me and tried to explain to me over the phone the idea that he had for this very narrow house in Poland, explaining it all in English with a very heavy Polish accent, and it all sounded like a prank or a joke. I thought it was one of my friends trying to fool me.
Jakub Szcząsny belongs to a collective called Centrala. It has a reputation for experimental architecture. Designing Karat House didn't take the 35-year-old too much time. What did was the red tape. addressing ownership issues, building regulations, and financing. Szczęsny needed to drum up some 70,000 euros to realize the project. The steel frame was put together at a parking lot on the outskirts of Warsaw. Private donors helped. A Polish art foundation owns the house. Wedging the steel frame into the gap was challenging.
The 10 centimeters were necessary for the mounting people to put their hands into the space and mount the screws. Everything had to be done manually.
His carrot house has won him praise and calls from potential customers worldwide.
Another possibility for a small house is actually here.
Filling building gaps has become Szczęsny's new mission. Carrot House, he says, is just the beginning.
There are many gaps between urban tissues in Warsaw and also in other cities like Berlin, for instance. These are perfect spaces for, let's say, qualified consumers and users to fit in, but for sure it's not going to be cheap.
Edgar Carrot plans to commute between his home in Tel Aviv and Warsaw. When he's not there, Carrot House will be used for artist residencies.
I couldn't imagine myself really living here, but I could imagine it as a working studio. Like, I could imagine myself coming here every day for a few hours, writing and thinking.
For Edgar Carrot, the narrow house is inspirational. Its architect, he says, has given tangible shape to a crazy idea.
Well, after their awe-inspiring recordings of the entire cycle of Beethoven's symphonies, Paavo Järvi and his Kammerphilharmonie Bremen are back with another new take on German romantic music this time. The Estonian-American conductor has taken on all four of Robert Schuman's symphonies, and once again Deutsche Welle was involved in an enlightening documentary film of the process. Well, that film premiered just last week in Berlin to resounding applause.
Paavo Järvi and the Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie Bremen. In the new documentary Schumann at Pier 2, they provide a fresh take on Robert Schumann's four symphonies. They're particularly interested in the piece's shifting moods. In the film, the orchestra's director and his musicians provide insights into the work and music of the Romantic composer Robert Schumann.
It's all about passion.
Now the documentary has been premiered in the cinema Kino International in Berlin in the presence of the Estonian-American conductor Paavo Järvi.
Schumann is somebody who gives everything and puts everything on a table and has this amazing capacity to kind of say something and then all of a sudden go into a direction that you least expect. All those incredibly wonderful, I call them neurotic corners of Schumann's music. Traditionally, all the great conductors tried to smooth over. And what we try to do is not to hide them, but in fact highlight them.
Some 500 guests attended the opening party. The director of the film, DW's Christian Berger, wants to target people not usually interested in classical music. His leading performer should help him achieve that aim.
No, everything is great.
Paavo Järvi is, of course, the mainstay of the film. He's the star. He's got a real talent for expressing complicated ideas, musical ideas, in simple ways, and his enthusiasm is infectious. That's priceless.
The filming of the concert took place last autumn in Bremen. The venue, Pier 2, a former dockyard that has been turned into a rock and pop concert hall. The filmmakers were particularly interested in the contrast between the industrial backdrop and Robert Schumann's romantic music. For the musicians, the cameras took some getting used to. They were rolling even during rehearsals.
Obviously, it's a bit of an unusual situation because we're basically under constant observation.
You've lost weight.
We just need to ignore them.
Later, at the studio shoot in Berlin, conductor Paavo Järvi and the musicians discuss the most important parts of the symphony. The studio provides an interesting contrast to the concert footage. Individual instruments are given a separate introduction outside the orchestra context.
That was like an audition with rolling cameras, like auditioning for a job. It's quite hard work playing all the tricky horn parts for the camera when you're dressed for a concert. But the atmosphere was relaxed and nurturing, and I think we pulled it off very successfully.
The lavish high-definition production was a co-production between Deutsche Welle and a number of other companies, including Radio Bremen and Unitel Klassiker, a broadcaster that specializes in classical music.
It's an excellent film, and I'm confident that it's a significant contribution to Deutsche Welle's work. It's not just about reproducing classical music played in concert halls in Germany, in Europe, for the benefit of international audiences. It's also about conveying a message and showing what role classical music plays here.
Deutsche Welle will be showing Schuman at Pier 2 in 2 parts on November the 4th and the 11th. And a DVD of the film and all 4 symphonies will be released on November the 5th.
Well, whether you're into bike racing, road biking, mountain biking, or even BMX, for every cycling style, there's a whole culture of professionalism and, of course, the corresponding equipment to fit the part. But freestyler Michael Dupont of France has thumbed his nose at all of that and created his own unique parkour style.
A woman's bicycle and a man on a mission. Michael Dupont performs well-known BMX stunts on an old lady's bike. But sometimes the 30-year-old Frenchman and his bicycle go their separate ways, and the wheels get bent.
The bike didn't roll, didn't take off. I don't get it. You can't steer it properly. When you turn, you hit either your knee or your foot. I hadn't ridden a bike like this in ages. My mother had one and I never liked riding it. So I wanted to see what the bike could do and push it to its limits.
Dupont has a love-hate relationship with his lady's bike. When a trick goes wrong, he often spends hours in his workshop repairing it. He's stripped as many as 10 bikes to get the parts, and often they aren't quite right. But Dupont makes them fit to ensure the bike is ready for his next bike tour.
Good, that'll hold.
Here in the village of Uzoé-en-Touraine, near Tours, Dupont practiced his stunts. He had someone film him, and then he uploaded the video to the internet. Millions have watched him soar and crash land. The amateur rider's video scored over 100,000 clicks on YouTube in 2 days alone.
When I made the video, I never thought it would be so successful. I only did it for fun.
Dupont came up with the idea after seeing a video made by Danny McCaskill, the Scottish star of the freestyle scene. His clips have racked up as many as 31 million hits. Michael Dupont wants to learn this forward somersault next.
I like everything he does, all the tricks. I've watched really closely how he does it. His position, his feet, his legs, his body, and tried to copy that. He's almost like a teacher to me.
Dupont practices in his own backyard, where he's built his own training course. He now negotiates it with his professional freestyle BMX bike. When performing new tricks, he exercises caution. Proceeding slowly but surely, it takes him several weeks to master a trick. Only then can he perform it on his woman's bike.
It all takes time and it's a real grind. You must have time to find the parts. But at some point, maybe in 2014, it'll be time for a new video. Vintage Ladies Bike, Part 2. With better brakes than in the first one.
But that's still a while off. Until then, as Michael Dupont knows, practice makes perfect.
Well, finally, Wolfgang Ganter likes to walk on the wild side as a photo artist. And not only has he discovered, but he also cultivates what you could call the beauty of bacteria. And if you're thinking, never in a million years would you hang bacteria on your wall, well, after you've seen his work, you might just want to think again.
Memories of a stroll along the beach are transformed into an artwork. It's made by bacteria growing on an old slide. Digitally enlarged, it produces meter-high pictures. Wolfgang Ganter had the idea to infect slides with bacteria.
My work with bacteria began by chance. When I was studying art in Karlsruhe, I would always find old slides in the garbage. I took them because I knew these were original moments from other people's lives. Moments you shouldn't throw away.
But corrode with bacteria instead. In his Berlin studio, Wolfgang Ganter grows different strains of bacteria and then uses them to alter the old slides. His pictures sell for around 6,000 euros each. But many buyers don't want to know how the artwork is made.
I managed to infect myself a couple of times. I infected my eye once, which became pretty swollen. All of my eye's white was yellow. I was really relieved when it healed a week later.
This box is a handmade incubator. Bacteria need a lot of warmth to grow. Ganter will let pieces develop for weeks, months, and sometimes years. And every year, he inspects and sorts tens of thousands of pictures. The patterns the bacteria make are random. But because he has worked with a number of bacterial strains, he can sometimes predict what the piece will look like.
I have a pretty high tolerance for disgusting things. You need to have one for this type of art. But I'm too fascinated with the process of decay to let that keep me from my work. What really happens, what grows, how things change, and how you can influence the results, it all really interests me.
After the bacteria have grown, Ganter will take up to 2,000 photos of each slide with a camera mounted on a microscope. He compiles the photos in his computer and transforms the centimeter-small slides into massive prints.
I don't define myself as a classic artist. I try not to define myself and to remain open. If I come to a point where my work doesn't interest me anymore, then I will immediately stop doing it. Because I want to stay true to myself.
2 years ago, Ganter took photos of paintings hanging in the Louvre, one of the most renowned museums in the world. He then subjected his photos of these masterpieces to decay. For example, Peter Bruegel's The Tower of Babel. His bacterial pictures are presented at exhibitions around the world.
And that's all for this edition of our highlights. So until we meet again, alles Gute aus Berlin and tschüss.